face because I'm keeping my camera, my phone in landscape. I don't know if that's okay. Or
Are you able to turn it this other way?
yeah, let me see this way.
Good deal. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Perfect. and
How's it been? Long time.
cool. Yeah. And yeah. Hi, everyone, and welcome to My Career Chronicles. Welcome, Precious. And the podcast where we dive deep into real career stories of real people across some of the biggest industries and career paths in the world. And today I'm your host again. We are in episode 16, and we have a very great topic for today. It's how to become an Azure Cloud Engineer. And right here with me is my guest, Precious Ajuru, Azure Cloud Engineer at I Am Property. I hope I pronounced that
Yes,
properly.
that's correct. Yes.
Thank you. And Precious, I'm super excited to welcome you to My Career Chronicles. And I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. And I know that today we are going to demystify everything around the Azure Cloud career. And if you're ready, I am ready.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. It's a privilege to be here and share my little insight about Azure Cloud Engineering and how to get into Azure Cloud Engineering. Um, as you rightly said, my name is Precious. I'm an Azure Cloud Engineer with I Am Property here in the UK. Is a property technology company, right, with head office in Newcastle. That's northern part of the UK. I've been with them for pretty much about 6 months. Prior to that, I was an Azure infrastructure engineer with with like a service provider, a cloud service provider. It's been an eventful journey, right? Yeah, we're talking about how to get into Azure Cloud Engineering, but
Yes,
then
actually, you actually
yeah,
did so well because I don't just want us to jump into getting into
right,
Azure Cloud Engineer. I wanted to like get to know your background,
yeah,
growing up. Like it's the
mm,
conventional way we typically started over
cool,
here. So you are right on track. So I'll just let you to
right,
keep going.
okay, yeah. So I'm from Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria, the southern part of Nigeria called Port Harcourt. And I had to mention that because that was that motivated my initial interest in pursuing my first degree in petroleum engineering because I grew up in the oil and gas around the oil and gas environment. So it was a
Mhm.
deal then to study something related to oil and gas. Right. So I studied petroleum engineering for my first degree. And after that I went on for my master's in petroleum engineering as well, drilling engineering, which is an aspect of petroleum engineering. Sometime in 2018, I had to pivot to tech because I felt the oil and gas industry was too volatile. So I didn't like the idea that you didn't have control of your career. So something could just happen, some war somewhere in some region could just happen and would trigger something, and then there'll be layoffs, right? It will affect your career. So I didn't want that kind of volatility. I wanted something that would give me some control. I know that okay, it's my expertise, it's my experience, right, that is keeping me on, right? Not some other external factors. So I had to pivot into tech. I must admit that my initial I actually wanted to get into data analytics. I actually started with data analytics before I encountered cloud computing, right? And yeah, so I had a bit of knowledge in data analytics. I was already deep into data analytics, and then I had to again pivot into cloud computing. And I think that was the best decision I actually made at the time, career wise. And I would say my background in engineering kind of made not like motivated, but kind of made it easier because then I was used to complex systems and all that. So the I can do spirit. I mean, if I had to go through the problem solving and the rigors of engineering and training and all that, and then there's something called cloud computing. I just was certain that I won't it won't be so much of an issue, right, to get to know it and use it freely. So that's a bit about my background and what motivated me to pivot into tech and then cloud computing.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And before we continue, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who is able to join us live. And like we typically do, feel free to just tell us maybe your name and where you're joining from. And if you also have any question for Precious, feel free to drop the question right in the comment, and then we are going to deal with that question as we go. And once again, our topic for today is how to become an Azure Cloud Engineer. And that's a new topic. And guess what is also new? I also have a shirt that says My Career Chronicles, which was a
Mhm.
birthday gift from my friend. So shout out to my friend Uto for gifting me this birthday gift that sort of talks about what we do over here. I'm Precious. I'm going to begin to dive deep into the whole thing. So
Right.
here you are done with a first degree in petroleum engineering, and then you went ahead to do a second degree, master's degree in drilling engineering. And
Hmm.
then somehow you are moving into tech, so to speak, or cloud
Right.
engineer, or you said you started with data analytics.
Yep.
Well, both of them are engineering,
Yeah.
but then, but then I'm really trying to understand your motivation behind this. I know you already mentioned
Mm.
you wanted to take control of your
Yeah.
destiny, so that things
Yep.
like maybe
Mm.
economic shock across the world will
Yep.
not just take
Mm.
you out.
Right.
But are you saying that there are no such shocks in the tech war, or it's just the frequency of that? I really want to deeply understand
Mm.
more of this motivation, because typically in Nigeria, at least, being in the
Right.
oil and gas industry, working with Chevron, Total, ExxonMobil, I think you make more money, at least at the
Yep.
time, than being
Hmm.
in tech, because that's the number
Yep.
one industry in Nigeria, the
Mm.
oil and gas industry. So why
Yep.
are you leaving all of that behind? Leaving,
Hmm.
why did you have to leave all of that behind and then just move all the way into this whole
Yep.
tech thing? And then what was your entry point like?
Right. That's actually a nice one. And it's actually it's typical for most people who transition from oil and gas to tech. I must say, initially my initial motivation was I had a good friend that was we are both in oil and gas. He was doing pretty well at the time. He was doing his masters in Imperial College, right? He used to be someone I looked up to career wise. And then all of a sudden he tells me, oh, he wants to leave the oil and gas. And then we had a conversation, a lengthy conversation, right? And he gave me his reasons, right? And the thing is, yes, you rightly said the oil and gas is kind of lucrative in terms of the pay and all that, right? But then when it comes to how volatile it is, right, there are lots of external factors that affect it. Let's say the cost of let's say oil price drops today, right? You see somebody in Oman or somebody in Nigeria that had nothing whatsoever to do with it will be affected because the company is trying to cut costs and still be profitable, right? And yes, that's completely understandable. Is there something like that in the tech? Not likely, because the thing about tech is, unlike oil and gas, where your skills are kind of specific, right? Tech, it's hard for you to go through tech and pick just one skill. I'll give you an example. If as even as an Azure Cloud Engineer, right, I've had to pick up SQL skills, right? And that on its own is a different career path,
Mhm.
right? I've had to pick up Python skills. I've had to pick up other automation skills. So if not cloud computing, I can still survive in other sectors of IT, right? And IT is driving the service economy in the world right now, right? So even if it doesn't work out in cloud computing, even if there's some shock in cloud computing, it's hard for there to be shock all across the IT because at least not in the foreseeable future, right? Because even the oil and gas at some point relies on IT. There's this touch point, right? So from my standpoint, I don't see a situation where the entire IT industry will be that volatile as we have in the oil and gas industry. And for someone that if you have the options already, unless you're deep into oil and gas, and then it's fine to still be within oil and gas. But for me that was just starting. I didn't have much to lose because I had not invested my career already. I just finished my master's, right? So it was an easy switch, right? Unlike someone that's been there 10 years, I have to start afresh and all that, maybe promotions and all that. So I will have a lot to lose, right? But I've also had people who have invested more years, like 15 years, and still had to transition. It's a personal decision, and it's a mix of many things, lots of moving parts,
Mhm.
right? I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. The other thing I wanted you to talk about, which we should talk about, was entry into the old Azure
Yeah.
career. But
Mm.
before then, I want us to actually get started. I love first principles because sometimes people
Yeah.
just go and then they hear Azure Cloud Engineering, and I'm wondering what is this
Mm-hmm.
Azure Cloud Engineering? Probably
Cool.
a teacher, probably in a
Right.
field that has nothing to do with this whole thing. And
Right.
so I want us to just simplify this. So if you were to explain what is Azure Cloud Engineering
Mm.
to a 5 year old, what
Yeah.
would you say it is? And what do you do, or what do Azure Cloud engineers actually do? Is it
Right.
just a
Hopefully.
fancy name for something?
Yeah.
Something?
Cool. Cool. That's an interesting question. Hopefully, we don't have 5 year olds, but yeah. Let me let me walk down a bit. We need to understand before we talk about Azure Cloud Engineering. We need to understand something first, and that is cloud computing. Right?
Mhm,
Because Azure Cloud Engineering is only a part of cloud computing. What is cloud computing? Cloud computing is about using computing resources over the internet. Let me simplify that further. Back in the days growing up, if you needed to watch some movies, you had to go and rent the disc, right? The video, and then use it on your video player. And hopefully, your parents allowed that to happen at the time. And then, if you needed to save some of your documents, right? Say your project work back in the days, you needed to buy a flash drive and all of that, right?
mhm,
But today, you have OneDrive. Even some Gmail, even some email accounts have storage, like Gmail, for example. You can pay for storage and all that. That is cloud computing. That aspect of cloud computing is managing storage. Now, for watching movies, you have Netflix. What has changed? You no longer need to buy your movies, no longer need to rent movies, no longer need to rent your disc. You're still getting the same thing, or even better, because there are hardly glitches, right? So you're still getting the same thing over the internet. So cloud computing is just using computing resources or computing over the internet. Right. Now, what is Azure Cloud Computing? In cloud computing, we have providers, we have vendors. It's like a business. So we have private cloud and public cloud. We have vendors for private cloud and vendors for public cloud. Vendors for private cloud, for example, Oracle is a very popular one, probably the biggest player in the private cloud. Right. I'll talk about the difference between private and public cloud. And then we
mhm.
have vendors for public cloud. Now, what's the difference between private and public cloud? Private cloud is you as a customer will have dedicated resources for you. Your storage, everything is for you. Like banks, they don't need to share resources because of the sensitivity of the data and compliance. And then public cloud is where different customers share the same resources, right? Share the same storage. Share. There's no problem. And it's a physical structure actually managed by these providers. They call it data center. Now, where does Azure come in? Azure is just one of the Microsoft is one provider, and they call their own Azure, right?
Got it.
So Microsoft is the owner of Azure. We have other public providers, the very popular ones. We have Google. It's called Google Cloud. I
Mhm,
know Google. I think Google handles X platform storage. I know we also have Amazon Web Services, AWS, and
mhm.
I know they handle storage for Netflix. So the Netflix movies you watch and all that. A company like Netflix will use multiple of these cloud providers just to have a backup. But I know I think majorly they use AWS for their storage, right? So Azure Cloud is the Microsoft platform for cloud computing. Microsoft is a provider, and they call their platform Azure. So that's what bettered Azure engineering.
Cool. Yeah, that's a very good answer because every time I'm like, this cloud everyone is talking about, is it the
Right.
cloud up in the sky or
Exactly.
people think about it in different ways. And I like the way you
Yeah.
actually broke it down. It's basically just a
Right.
storage infrastructure and it can be
Yeah.
provided by different providers, could be public,
Yeah.
could be private. We have like
Mhm.
AWS, we have Google,
Google.
we have
Yeah.
Oracle, and a couple
Yeah.
others.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking if we have any question. Okay, no question at this time. Okay, let's talk about getting into this Azure Cloud Engineering
Mm.
career. And
Right.
I see that you are 10x Microsoft certified.
Yeah.
And if I look at 10x Microsoft certified, at the top of my head, I'm wondering maybe let's say I need to take 1 year each to be one Microsoft certified. Is that going to be a 10 years thing before I even get started? Or
Yeah.
can I be 1x Microsoft certified and then get started?
Mm.
What do I need? Or do I need to get a master's degree before I get
Yeah.
started? So I'm just
Mm.
trying to understand the basic entry points here.
Right.
Maybe you can also share that from your own experience. What was your entry point? What did you
Mm.
need to do? I know there are a lot of things going on. People talk about boot camps, taking
Yeah.
courses online,
Yeah.
and all of that. But I just want to understand from your own point of view, what is the entry points like? What
Mm,
certifications are needed? What trainings are needed? How do you
mm.
just get into this career as someone who is getting started?
Cool. That's a good question. Right. So for someone that is just starting or transitioning into cloud computing, right? The truth is most of the work is going to be based on personal development, right? There's the options of boot camps, but those are just to give you platform, right, to motivate you, right, into the direction you're going. The entry point for Azure, for example, would be so when I started, I had to first of all um, confirm or verify the different providers and which one I think I'll be okay with. I had to check on the pros and cons and the market share in the region I was at the time. For example, in Nigeria, Azure dominates. In the UK, Azure dominates. So I had to, because it's one thing to get into the industry, it's one thing to be marketable at the end of the day, because
Correct.
the whole idea is for you to find jobs.
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting with Azure, the entry point will be for you to start with a course, an introductory course, a foundation course called Azure Fundamentals, right? It's called AZ900, Azure Fundamentals. That's the entry level for Azure, right? Now, once you're done with that course does everything about telling you what cloud computing is. It actually gives you the very basic things, tells you what cloud computing is, tells you what storage is, tells you what databases is, tells you the things you will eventually need throughout your career. And after that, right, the next thing I usually recommend to people is there's this good initiative Microsoft brought out sometime a couple of years back. It's called Applied Skills, because theory is good, but then practical kind of cements your expertise, right? It's okay to tell me you can do it, but can you do it? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So after you get through the foundation course, I usually advise people get familiar with the applied skills. Applied skills are like labs, practical labs, and Microsoft examines you, gives you, assesses you, and then gives you a score, a pass or a fail score. So it tests your skills on storage on the different aspects of the cloud computing. And passing each of those applied skills kind of makes you a specialist in that particular aspect of the applied skills, right? Remember, I said cloud computing is using computing resources over the internet, and there are lots of computing resources. There is storage, there is
Mm-hmm.
databases, there is the what they call compute, that's virtual machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now each of these components have the applied skills that pertain to them,
Oh.
right? So yes, so you might want to try the storage applied skills, and once you're done with that, you even be confident because all of the labs, all of the practicals you're going to do, all of the problems you're going to solve are not easier or less relevant than the real life projects, right? Might kind of test your abilities and your skills, and once you pass it, you can be confident that yes, you know this, right? And you can put it on your CV, and you can start building on other skills as well. By the time you get like 3 to 4 applied skills, you're in a good position to start applying for jobs. Why pursuing other certifications? Because the thing about certifications is this: it's okay to go through the certifications. I can easily tell you do the AZ900, and then I tell you the next one, and then I tell you the ones that follow. But the truth is, you're just passing exams, right? And those exams are just theory. Can you do the job? Right. So it's always better to kind of complement the exams or supplement the exams with real life practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And those applied skills test your knowledge, not just test your knowledge, test your skills and verifies that you can do it, right? And it's a badge you can use on LinkedIn. It's a badge you can put on your CV. Of course, you always quantify your impact on your CV because that makes you marketable. There's nothing to be modest about it, right? So I will always advise the entry point starts with the foundation course, Azure Fundamentals, and after that, try to get into the applied skills, the core applied skills, the storage, networking, the virtual machines, and then you look at going to the next level of certifications because certifications just gives you the edge. It takes you to the interview, gets you to the interview, right? And then at the interview, what you know, right, hands-on is going to give you an extra edge compared to other candidates,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's usually my approach.
Okay, something to unpack here, guys, and it's basically about the fact that, yeah, I mean, as great as certifications are, it makes sense not to just start off focusing on accumulating so many certifications. And thank God for platforms like Microsoft that has made provision for where you can, run labs and have like get your hands dirty in summary. So
Mm,
Precious is recommending after you do the AZ 900, try to get your hands dirty with a couple of labs. And that way you
mm,
can be able to demonstrate, having worked on something real on your resume, and then begin to think
right.
about like entry level jobs. And then you can sort of begin to now build
Mm,
on more certifications and go from there. Let's talk
mm,
about what Azure Cloud Engineers actually do. Yeah,
right.
what is the day to day like? People say this thing where they talk about a day in the life of a cloud, an Azure Cloud Engineer, or a day in the life
Mm,
of XYZ. So I'm thinking a day in the life of an Azure Cloud Engineer at I Am Property.
mhm,
What do you do? Do you just go to the office and maybe drink tea and
right.
then attend meetings? And I don't know, like, I just want you to talk about that. What is the day to day like, or what is a
Mm.
typical day like for you? Let's talk about that real quick.
Cool, right. So it's a bit of it's a mix of all everything you mentioned, including the tea.
Cool.
So, right. A typical day, remember, cloud computing again, I'll keep going back to that, is using computing resources over the internet. So you have deployed these computing resources. Your day-to-day job will be to manage the resources, right? You are the expert on the job, right? If any of the users who interface with the resources, it could be the software developer. So let me explain that to you. There's what they call virtual machine. So a
Mhm.
virtual machine is like a normal computer, right? But somewhere in the cloud,
Okay.
right? So yeah, so people have access to that virtual machine. They deploy apps in that virtual machine. So let's say an online e-commerce shop. Let's say, James, you have some company that run online, right? You sell things, right? And you want to market your goods, and yeah, you basically sell. So you have your developers deploy the app in that virtual machine, and it goes live. Everybody can access it, right? Now, if anything happens to the virtual machine, you as a cloud engineer are responsible for the maintenance of the virtual machine, for the operating system of the virtual machine, like you would on a normal computer.
Oh.
You get, so these are actual resources for in the space in the cloud. It's just abstracted from you. You're not seeing it. So a typical day for an Azure Cloud Engineer is security of the resources, managing the resources, making sure there are no issues, right? And if there are issues, you rectify the issues, right? So it's not just about deploying the resources. You manage it throughout the time of the resource.
Okay, let's talk about tools. What are the tools? What are like what are like your work tools? Like, I know you already mentioned a virtual machine. What other
Yes.
work tools do you have? I know that, or what other platforms do you leverage on
Yeah.
to do your work every day? So, do you want to walk
Mm.
us through like some of those tools you use on a day to day, and then maybe what they help you do at work?
Right. So everything is managed, and this is true for all of the cloud platforms, including Google and AWS. Everything is managed on their platform. They have a portal that you manage all of the resources. And for the most part, it's actually a click and drag. Right. Now, there's always an extra element of it where you want to make your job a lot easier. And then that's where the automation comes in. I mentioned earlier that, like you would on your normal computer, if your operating system is behind security wise, there are patches, right? You will need to do manually do that on your computer. But let's say I have a company, or you have a company. I am the cloud engineer of the company, and you have 100 servers, 100 virtual machines. It would be too much for me to manually go and update the operating systems one by one, right?
Mhm.
That's where the extra tools come in handy. There's what they call automation. It can automate the patching of those operating systems. To get, so yes, you need to get hands-on with you need to be comfortable with some automation tools. And the major ones are, that's what they call Bicep. So Bicep is majorly for Azure resources, for management of Azure resources. There's other tools that cut across the cloud platforms, like
Is
Terraform.
Bicep like a programming language like Python or something? What is that like?
It is, but it's not exactly like Python. So Python is high up there. Bicep
Mhm.
is more user friendly.
Okay,
It's easier
got
to
you.
use, yeah, but it basically does the same thing. You're automating resources, you're managing resources with Bicep. So instead of the graphical user interface experience, right? Because with the graphical user interface experience, you can only manage one resource at a time,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now with these two, you can manage lots of resources because a typical company, a typical organization will have lots of similar resources. I mentioned virtual machines. Hardly any company has only one virtual machine, right? Because when you deploy apps, let me explain something. When you deploy apps, let's say you have an application, let's say you have an online shop for clothing, right? And you deploy and people are using that online shop for clothing. If you're using just one virtual machine, just one server, most likely when there is huge traffic, it's going to crash. So what people do, what organizations do, they have like 50, hundreds and tens of servers, right? That have the same application. Just like when you're using the Amazon portal or Amazon app to order your goods, right? All of those things are hosted on a server, on a virtual machine. And it's not one virtual machine that is serving you because there are lots of customers. You have hundreds and thousands of virtual machines, but you're getting the same experience. So it's the same app that is deployed in all of them. Now, for you, if you are as a cloud engineer, you want to manage those apps or those virtual machines, it's going to be a lot for you to go one by one to manage them. So you will now use the automation to do the same thing you want to do, whatever it is you want to do. It could be updates, it could be security related, but you use it to do the same thing you want to do across the thousands and hundreds of the virtual machines at once, right? So that's where the automation tools come in handy. Other than that, the normal day-to-day majority of your work will usually be on the portal, right? Like say somebody raises an issue, they can't get into a virtual machine, or they're having issues with a database hosted in the Azure platform. You may have to resolve the issue on the portal. So it's not exactly complex.
Okay. Yeah, someone said Bicep is native to Azure. Yeah, correct. Precious already
Correct.
mentioned that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So something I also wanted to talk about here is the whole. I feel like the career is like, I don't know, it's not so popular out there, but I feel
Mm,
like so much is going on.
mm,
And normally we hear about software engineers and all
yeah.
of that. And then I feel like every
Mm,
time there is an engineer in front of a career, people begin to
mhm,
freak out. And the
yeah.
freaking out is mostly because maybe they think about, oh, am I going to be coding? I don't know. Sometimes this
Mm,
code, the way
mm,
coding sort of makes people just
yeah.
freak out. So
Mm,
how deep is the Azure career into that? Do you need to do a lot of coding, or is it
mm,
something that someone, because people try to tie their previous
yeah.
experience? You can hear someone asking a question like, "Oh my God,
Mm,
I have a degree in communication science, or I have a
yeah.
degree in English. Am I going to be
Mm,
able to get into this engineering thing?" So
mm,
how deep is the Azure career in things like coding? More
mm,
technical things. How deep is that, and how have you been able to? How did you
mm.
navigate this part in your own
Right.
career? I
Yeah.
mean, I know you have like an engineering degree, which it's an advantage, but then everyone doesn't have an
Yeah,
engineering degree,
a
is what I'm
giant
saying.
degree. Yes, yeah, you're right. So let me address the first thing you mentioned. Yes, it doesn't seem very popular, and the reason is people just want to use the applications. People just want to shop online and do their stuff. They don't care to know what's happening at the background, right? But over 85% of companies use the cloud platform, right? So yeah, so it's not out there, but it's happening behind the scenes. So there's cloud platforms, companies are using cloud platforms all over, right? On how deep do you have to be technically, or how much of engineering experience do you need, or how much of coding do you need? The truth is, starting out, you don't need to have any of those experience, right? Those things only make your job easier. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I started in my career, I didn't have to know much about Bicep, or there's what they call ARM templates, right? Bicep is gradually replacing ARM template. So ARM template is more like is you generate it, right? Microsoft helps you to generate it on the portal, right? Based on what you're deploying. And then you can manually edit out the resources you need to deploy and all of that. It might be difficult to put that in words now, but the point is you don't need to be heavy on coding. You don't need to know much about coding. You don't need to know anything at all about coding when starting, right? But with time, you will need to pick up those skills, especially bicep if you're going to be using majorly Azure. And it's actually very user friendly. It's very interactive. It has what they call IntelliSense. It's very interactive, right? And it's not complex as people see it out there, like software engineers and all that. But starting out, no, you don't need any coding experience. I mentioned earlier that majority of the things you'll be doing are on the portal, right? And usually a click and drag operations for the most part. It's just knowing what to do, right? The coding aspect is if you just need to it's auxiliary is if you just need to make your work a lot easier. For example, if I wanted to update our virtual machines, nothing stops me from staying awake by 2 a.m. to do that. But is that convenient? No. Right. So I will have to automate it because I don't want to do that. Kind of just makes your job easier.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. I like it. Maybe I might as well just consider getting into the Azure Cloud Engineering
You're already
career.
doing well where you are.
Yeah, just saying. Okay, walk us through getting your first job. How was that
Right.
experience? Because I feel like there is this
Hmm.
inertia that comes with getting your first job,
Yeah.
and it's always a
Hmm.
take-off point for a lot of people. But
Right.
personally, how was that experience for you, and what do you recommend today?
Hmm. That's an interesting question because my first job actually was more of an internship. So I was doing a boot camp for this company, right? And then after the boot camp, they had another company that was already implementing Azure for customers, right? So I then started interning with them for quite some time, was about 2 to almost 3 years, right? Aside that, my first real job was here in the UK, right? Because when I was interning with the company, I didn't have any certifications, right? But when I got my certifications, my first real job was then here in the UK. Um, I know I needed to get a real job, right? So all I what I did at the time was to pursue my certifications. The two, because most of the times you're applying for jobs, they always specify the AZ 900 or the AZ 104. Those are the two most important certifications.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a couple of times they'll specify AZ 305. AZ 305 is like the expert level certification for Azure
Got
Cloud.
you.
Right. So what I did was I had to muzzle all of those certifications, got them, and then started doing the practice. Like I had to go back to
Oh,
apply skills.
no, hold on. You said something very interesting. Like, what was the timeline like to get into all these three certifications?
Interestingly, I did those two certifications in 3 months.
That's another level of grit.
Yes, yeah. So, but then those 3 months, I was out of job. I was in between jobs. I had just left my role at PwC
Mm-hmm.
as a technology consultant. I was just fresh in the UK, right? So I wasn't doing for like 6 months. I wasn't doing anything. So I had 3 full months to concentrate on that,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave it my all within those 3 months. And it's not as hard as it sounds. The truth is, so long as you have the time, it wasn't taking me more than 2 hours, 3 hours a day, right? And I did all of those three certifications, one each month. And when I got them, I started applying for jobs because then it's now on my CV. I've quantified my impact, it's now on my CV. But
Mm-hmm.
then while I'm still applying for jobs, I had to brush up on the skills from the certifications, using applied skills, right? Going back to the things I read in the certifications and doing lots of practicals and demos. So the good thing with cloud platform, and especially Azure, is on the platform, you can create an account, right, and be doing exactly what is out there in the real world, right? Let's say I can deploy my application like an online shop on Azure platform, and it will look like a normal online shop like AWS, sorry, like Amazon online shop or whatever online shop is out there. So you
Yeah.
can demo all of those things, right? So when you say you can do this, you're doing it, right? So when
Right.
you go to the interview, they ask you, can you do this? You can confidently say yes because you have done it, you've practiced it.
Mm-hmm.
You get maybe the scale might be different, maybe it's a higher scale, but the truth is foundationally you have that, you have the skill, right? And that is enough to get you in, right? And then when you get in, the experience will kind of validate will kind of improve your skills, right? And give you more opportunities to grow. So yeah, that was how I started.
Good entry point. Yeah, I mean, and I'm particularly impressed by the fact that you sort of I know there is this popular
Mm.
phrase amongst people who are learning something where they say lock in. Um, I'm impressed by the fact that you actually did lock in for three
Yeah.
months and you were able to get those certifications nailed, and then you went as far as running a couple laps, and then that landed you in your first role.
Mm.
I feel like that was like a very sterling performance there, and it's something like there is so much to learn from that,
Yeah.
because sometimes it's easy to say this is what you want, but there's also the
Yep.
commitment that comes with what that thing you want. And talking to
True.
someone who has actually walked the path feels differently, because
Mm.
when you see something from a distance, it looks like it's not reachable. But when you have someone
Mm.
that is within your circle who has actually walked that path, then you can
Mm.
further, confirm that, oh, truly that this thing is reachable. After all, I know this person who actually was able to
Right.
get this done.
Mm.
What about the interviewing process? I feel like
Yeah.
different careers have like different interviewing process, or even
Mm.
different companies have like
Mm.
different interviewing process.
Interview
But
process. Yeah.
somehow they can come. There is
Mm.
always a meeting point, and I'm
Mm.
very sure. I know you work like at least different organizations in this Azure space before now, and that means you would have
Yep.
also encountered like different
Mm.
interviewing process based on the
Yep.
organization or even the role. So do you want to
Mm.
just talk about what is the interviewing process like for the Azure Cloud Engineering career? What is that like? Is there a technical interview?
Right.
What is that process like for you so far?
So, like every normal interviewing process, right, is a mix of technical and behavioral, right? Um, it might be more of technical because you're coming to do something that is hands-on, right? And that's why I said you need the skills, you need the applied skills to kind of validate your knowledge, right? To get hands-on with the things you already know, right? Because most of the interviews will center around the core things you'll be doing on the Azure portal, the networking, the identity, the storage, the SQL, managing SQL, and sometimes the automation that I talked about, right? Hardly with any interviewing process ask you to do it on the spot, but at least they want to validate that you actually know it. To get, I've had interviews where it's as simple as, "Can you do this?" Yes, right. I also have interviews where, tell us if you have so issue, right, with this networking. What should you do? So it's kind of one just the other one was just you. It was just a binary answer, like yes or no,
Mhm.
you can do it. And the other one was just you telling them how to do it.
Yeah, kind of walk us through.
Exactly, walk us through because they need to validate or need to verify or confirm that yes, you've actually done it before, right? And of course, in this day and age, we also know that there are lots of resources out there. There are AI tools and all that. You get, but at least you already have this knowledge, right? You already have this expertise, and then with the resources out there, you can leverage and be better on the job, right? They just need to know that okay, we are paying for something, we're paying for some knowledge to get because if it's just you coming to use the resources out there, I mean they can as well do that. They can as well train somebody on the job, right? So is like I mentioned earlier, is a mix of technical and behavioral, of course, the normal STAR method, right? And then I mentioned earlier, always quantify your impact, right? If you're writing articles on Azure, if you've done a couple of projects, the applied skills, if you've done 5 applied skills, put it on your CV. There's nothing to be modest about. Put it on your CV. Those are credentials from Microsoft, right? And they are valid, they are verifiable. Get right. And yes, that's pretty much it.
Okay, you keep talking about quantifying your skill, and I really love that word. Yeah, and it's like I feel like it's a word that every career should cherish, because no
Hmm.
matter what you do or no matter what you've done, if we cannot measure it, then there
Right.
is no, we can't really say if you actually truly did it. But let's talk about
True.
like in the course of quantifying your skill or gaining visibility. Social media is one of the biggest platforms people use to
Hmm.
like gain visibility on their
Yeah.
career. And I know that even as a person, you write on LinkedIn, you write on
Hmm.
Medium, and then I know you also like even write and teaching people what to do, how to deploy this. I've seen a couple of those
Hmm.
articles from you. But
Hmm.
I wanted you to talk about like what is the impact of all of that social media visibility like on your career, or
Mm,
how do you think it impacts the Azure career generally?
mm,
Maybe people use
yeah.
platforms like LinkedIn. I know other people are on X or Twitter, as the case may
Mm,
be. There are a bunch
mm,
of platforms. Some I'm not even aware of. So, but
right.
generally, how has leveraging platforms like LinkedIn and every other social media platform been helpful to your career growth as an Azure cloud engineer?
Yes. Immensely, I would say. For a fact, my last two jobs were actually from LinkedIn.
Oh, so
Right.
okay. Everyone, please go and start writing on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's what I just wanted to cut to say, but I'll just allow you to head on.
Right. So, like you rightly said, I create on LinkedIn and I share on LinkedIn, and it allows me to connect with people as well. There used to be a time where every single week I get like job offers, like job people asking me, "Do you want this role? Are you free for this role?" It happened while I was at my previous job, and even currently. Right? Do you want? You have to tell them, "Oh, sorry, I'm with this simply. I'm not looking to change now." But it gives me that visibility and opportunities because people are seeing what I'm doing and I'm sharing it, my
Mhm,
articles and everything. It kind of people, like you rightly said, people are looking for a way to quantify something, your knowledge, right? And you're making it easier for them if they can just see all of these things, all of these contributions, right? And then they want to give you the opportunity, they want to have a conversation with you because somehow they are convinced that you can do the job.
mhm,
You get, so that's one good thing that LinkedIn and social media has helped me to do, right? And that's why I'm not stopping anytime soon with creating content and sharing on LinkedIn because it has opened lots of doors for me, speaking opportunities at conferences, job opportunities. Like I rightly said, my current job and my previous job was based on my visibility on LinkedIn, making connections. And lots of that. So it's not something I take lightly. It's actually something I always encourage anybody. If you're venturing into anything, even if it's outside of cloud computing, make yourself known. It's not enough to just know it, right? Let people know that you know it, right? Because people, it's a competitive world. Everything counts
mhm.
as an advantage. You just need that extra edge, right? And marketing yourself is a huge edge,
Correct.
right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's your notch for anyone seeing this or that will be seeing this. That's your notch to go and be visible, right on LinkedIn, share your knowledge. Don't
Mm,
think your knowledge is not important. Excuse me. People are waiting out there to read from you. People are also watching. They may not be saying anything, but they are actually watching and seeing what you're doing. Uh,
mm,
AI is here precious, and
right.
it is disrupting industries. It
Mm,
is disrupting careers. It is
mm,
causing companies to fire 11,000 people. I just read
mm,
somewhere that, a
mm,
certain company said they will be firing 11,000 employees
mm,
because they are not AI compliant or something around AI. And
mm,
it doesn't look like it's going to stop. I was just
mm,
looking at Nvidia market cap, and then I'm seeing $4 trillion. That has never
mm.
happened in the history of the world.
Yeah.
The other day, I think some weeks ago, in one day, Oracle went to a place that we could not even imagine, and then the CEO was adding about 100 million billion dollars to his
Mm,
net worth in one day. I
mm,
can go on and on. All of these are like very, it feels like a black swan actually, that
mm,
AI is disrupting industries,
mm,
creating wealth in crazy dimensions and all of that.
mm,
But let's bring it home to Azure Cloud Engineer.
mm,
Why would I pay someone some thousands of dollars or pounds to sit in my
mm,
office and work as an Azure Cloud Engineer when maybe I can go on GPT-5 and say, hey,
mm,
what do I need to do as an Azure Cloud Engineer? And then boom, it's
mm,
going to tell me step by step what to do. And then,
mm,
hey, how do I deploy this infrastructure to the cloud? And then it's going to
mm.
say, okay, do this, do that, do the other. I mean, there's vibe coding.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but anyway, I'm just trying to say, how
Mm.
do you think AI is impacting or will be impacting this career in the future or even currently?
Cool. And this actually brings me to something I've been hoping to talk about, right? People always think so. Cloud computing or cloud engineering and AI are not mutually exclusive. In this industry, they actually coexist. In fact, as a cloud engineer in 2025, you should be hands-on with AI tools. You should be familiar with the AI tools that are available in Microsoft. For example, as a cloud engineer, remember I said again, cloud computing is deploying cloud computing resources over the internet. AI tools are actually computing resources. They're actually resources that are there in the cloud. You made mention of ChatGPT and using ChatGPT to ask it what to do and how to run your cloud operations. Do you know that on the Azure platform, right, it can create a ChatGPT for companies on the platform so that companies don't need to use ChatGPT. They use their own ChatGPT, right, on the platform. So this is what I mean. ChatGPT is out there, it's public,
Mhm.
right? But what about you have a company, you have a very big company, right? And you want users and people that are interacting with your company to only see your company data, right? So you don't want any external knowledge, right? Everything is grounded with your data. So that avoids hallucination. So everything that the AI tool gives the user is verified and confirmed and validated, right? So
Mhm.
reduces liability. You can do all of these things even in Azure, right? As an Azure cloud engineer. So you can deploy the AI tools. So that's why I said they are not mutually exclusive. There are AI tools in Azure that you also manage as a cloud engineer. You
Oh.
understand? So, right, so yes, and talking about how it's impacting cloud computing, it kind of makes your job even easier, right? There's what they call Copilot, which is an AI tool in Azure. So with Copilot, Copilot can suggest to you, right, what to do about this resource. It can spot something, it's an anomaly in the resources, can detect something in the resource or in your environment, in your Azure environment, and tells you, look up this thing. I think this thing is wrong, or it tells you what is actually wrong with it, right? And you go and fix it. That would normally take you to manually check your environment, check your resources, and pinpoint that thing that the AI tool has just helped you to do with a matter of seconds. Do you understand? So it kind of makes your job easier, makes your job better. So one thing I would advise an Azure cloud engineer or any cloud engineer in 2025 is to try and get familiar with the AI tools that pertain to the cloud provider. In Azure, we have Azure AI, we have Azure AI Foundry. Azure AI Foundry is a platform for Azure AI tools, right? We have lots of Azure AI tools like document intelligence. We have speech, like speech is an AI tool, speech synthesis, speech translation, and everything, right? All of these things are resources that you as a cloud engineer will be deploying and managing. So no, AI is not coming to take over your job. You are going to be managing AI on the Azure platform. So you, in fact, it makes you more relevant. You understand? Yeah.
Because the AI itself needs to be deployed to the cloud,
Exactly,
technically.
exactly, exactly. You don't just leave it out there. It's not going to manage itself. You get someone has to manage it, and you as a cloud engineer, you should be getting prepared to manage it. And I think that's one gap we're having now. People are trying to separate AI from cloud engineering roles, right? And the problem with that is with time you start playing catch up. You get
Right.
yeah, so it's always best, it's always advisable. Get familiar with the AI tool that speaks to your vendor, that speaks to your platform, right? Because there will always be need for it, right, in your space.
Okay, and that's also telling anyone who is joining us live. If you have any question, feel free to drop that as we begin to round up. We'll be taking your questions, if any. Precious, I want us to talk about the economy of the Azure cloud engineering
Mm,
career. Is this career lucrative? I am someone who is always very interested in finding the balance between, I'm
mm,
working on a job I love, and then the job
mm,
also has to be working on me. The
mm.
job also has to be rewarding me, just like I am
Right.
putting in all my energy and all of that into the job.
Mm,
So how what is the economy like for this job? Is it a lucrative career? Is it one of those careers where you need to work 35 years before you can buy
mm.
a new car? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just tell us, what is it like? Maybe what are the pay like? I know it varies from maybe location to location.
Country, yeah,
Yeah.
region to region, yes. Yep. So generally, it's to me, it's actually very lucrative considering where I'm coming from, right? From the petroleum industry and all of that.
Mhm.
And if you even check it out, right, among the top 10 tech paying jobs, right, you always find cloud engineering roles,
Mhm.
right? And even in the UK, is super lucrative. In fact, there was a time I was on, was it Reddit or Quora? So some guys were talking about their pay and their years of experience, right? And then I just had 2 years of experience, and I was around the 50K bracket. So some
Mhm.
guy came and said, "Oh, he has had 3 years of experience and he's earning 90K pounds." And some other guy said, "Oh, he has had 7 years of experience and he's earning 75K pounds." And they were bashing him. What? Oh, no, no, he said he has had 2 years of experience and he's earning 75K pounds. You were like bashing him. Why 75K pounds is so low for you and all that for the job you're doing and all that. That's
Mm.
the point, is that's how lucrative it is, right? I mean,
Right.
look, I was like, oh, if I tell this people my own now, right? Because mine was a bit lower than that. But
Yeah, just two
yeah,
years.
that has changed. But the point is, and even when it comes to entry level roles, I don't think any entry level, generally speaking, I think the entry level salaries are very competitive compared to other tech jobs. I can't think of any tech job that pays better for entry level roles, right?
Right.
Say in the UK, for example, entry level Azure Cloud roles, right? There's what they call salary threshold in the UK where you need for visa sponsorship. I think it's
Mhm.
about £38,000 or so, right? Most entry level roles are already paying more than that,
Right.
at least from that, right? And to compare that, an entry level nurse in the UK is probably any less than 30K. You get, if you compare it
Yeah.
to other industries, right?
Mhm.
Now, this is normal for tech, but I'm just trying to say the pay is very competitive and it's even more in the US. Right.
Apparently.
So yeah, sometimes I try to say, oh, do I want to go to the US? I just go online to check,
You're
check
welcome.
check the salaries, and believe me, it's very lucrative and is one that, with experience, even an additional year of experience,
Mhm.
right, kind of takes you up there in terms of salary, right? So I always encourage people, if you can, you have all the motivation you can get, right? It's an incentive, it's a lucrative industry. There are good incentives, and most importantly the flexibility to not go to the office every day, the flexibility of working from home, right? And a typical cloud engineer, I used to think it was just me, a typical cloud engineer is not always busy, so to put, right? um there could be days where cumulatively cumulatively you're working for just 2 hours, because it's not all the time you have issues,
Mhm.
right? You sometimes you respond to issues, sometimes you're managing resources, but not all the time. You're not going to be managing the resources all through. There could be weeks where in the whole week you've not worked for more than 5 hours, right? Right. But whenever there's an issue, you're always there to resolve it. So it gives you that flexibility, right? So if you have the bandwidth to do other things, maybe run businesses or anything, you can still have your time to yourself, right? So it's lucrative and it gives you flexibility as well. So it gives you that work-life balance.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a sign to get into that cloud engineering career, especially as your cloud engineering career, because not only is it very impactful to your employer, it's also very rewarding to you as a person in any part of the world, actually. If you were to start all over, how would you navigate if you were, let's say you were going to just start all over from the beginning in this whole career, how would you go
First
about
of all, First of all, I wouldn't study petroleum engineering. Because no disrespect, no disrespect to petroleum engineers, but I felt that was a waste of my 6 years. I would just go straight to I'll just go straight to computer science or anything IT related,
Mhm.
right? Because I had to discover this path much later
Right.
from friends and from people I met along the way. Right, graduating from petroleum and with a petroleum degree, I only had one dimensional view: is oil and gas, is the Shell, the Total, the Chevron, or nothing.
Hmm.
Right. Back then we used to talk about I wouldn't work for Shell. They don't pay as much. I work for Chevron. Yeah.
I
And then
know.
and reality hits you after school. You'll be looking for a filling station.
Been there, done that.
So my point is, if I had to start afresh, it wouldn't be, again, no disrespect to the oil and gas and people in the oil and gas industry. It wouldn't be petroleum. Yeah, I would start afresh on IT, any IT degree. It hasn't changed anything right now, but I would have started much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started much earlier. So
Okay, that's cool. And okay, as we round up, I have this question I normally ask: what is that? Because in my career chronicles, we talk about the part of your career that is not public knowledge or that people
yeah.
cannot find on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Mhm.
what is that thing about your career that is not we cannot find on your LinkedIn or that is not typically public knowledge, but is something very important in your career journey?
Uh, so I think I've mentioned it slightly. Um, People overrate. So I wouldn't want to say overrate because you have the knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're paid more for doing less,
Okay.
right? And when I mean doing less, I mean in terms of how serious the job is, right? But the skills you have are invaluable. You always
Right.
have. In fact, you're paid for your skills. You're paid for your knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You get so it's not as taxing as every normal job that you do 9 to 5, working from morning all through the day and all that you get.
Mm-hmm.
So from outside, people don't know this much, right? But from inside, it's a normal thing for every cloud engineer. This job is relaxed, is very much relaxed.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be sending some people to Precious to get into this cloud engineering thing. Okay, I mean that is actually what this whole podcast is all about because then someone goes on your LinkedIn and sees, oh, Azure Cloud Engineer, I am property, and that's it. But I always feel like there is more to it. There is to every story.
Right.
There is the inside story. You're not about to go on LinkedIn and write about no one is going to do that. So that's actually why we come here and then we talk about all this part of the career, the journey that is not necessarily out there. What is that one question you thought I was going to ask you that I did not ask and you wanted to talk about?
Uh, I would have thought we have covered. What was the question? Nothing actually, actually, because you even asked the ones I was not prepared to answer. You covered.
Okay,
So,
that's
we
cool.
covered all
And
angles actually.
okay, and
Okay,
what's your
maybe what is my since I have a job now,
Mhm,
what's still my motivation for creating content with the same intensity as I have and all that? Yeah.
mhm.
Because that's one thing I get asked all the time.
Yeah.
You have a job, you're doing
Who are you
okay.
trying to impress again?
You get, you understand that kind of thing, yeah. And it's not like you're hoping to switch jobs anytime soon.
Mhm.
Right, yeah. I don't know if I want to answer that now. There's a
Please
reason, but I don't know if I
answer.
want to. So yeah, there's so there's this stuff Microsoft does, and I think it's the same for I know about AWS, I don't know about Google, where they value community contributions, right? And you get rewarded for it in terms of validating your expertise. You get for Microsoft, it's called MVP, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional.
Got
It's a
it.
kind of badge, it's a badge of honor, right? That shows that validates your expertise, that tells the world you're an expert in Microsoft technologies, right? And for context, there are less than 4,000 MVPs in the world,
Whoa.
right? Yeah,
That's
so that's
huge.
something I am pursuing, and it's also possible for everybody. All you need to do is to be making contributions, having this kind of sessions. I tell people about Microsoft Azure, mentor people on Microsoft's technologies and all that, right? So that's been my motivation of recent for the speaking sessions, for the content writing, and all of that. Yeah, and for AWS, I think they call theirs AWS Community Builder.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Someone said, how can I link up with you? Yeah, once this video is up, I'm going to put
Mhm,
Precious's LinkedIn profile up there. So you're
mhm,
going to be able to get to Precious on LinkedIn. Yeah, that is the
mhm,
platform you can use to link up with Precious. Do
mhm.
you have any meetup, Precious? Do you have any meetup?
Yes, I
Or
do.
maybe any platform someone can connect with you outside LinkedIn?
Yeah, I have a meetup, and I don't know. Should I? How you
Yes.
gonna?
So I'm just
Yeah,
going to get that detail from you and add it to
yeah,
the
yeah.
video
I'll
so
do
that
that. Yeah,
anyone going to the video can always see that.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Yes. Thank you.
thank you very much, Precious. This was a very
Mhm,
eye-opening session. I mean, personally, I didn't also know so much about the Azure cloud engineering career. So it's both
mhm,
very beneficial to me as a person and then to every other
mhm,
person that is seeing or will be seeing this. And I really appreciate you taking the
mhm,
time to talk to us about your career journey and all the way from the petrol engineering career and all of that down here.
mhm.
And like we normally end it, tea or coffee.
T.
T. Okay, that's another T person. And with that, we call it a day on My Career Chronicles today. And I
Right.
wish you a great and a successful weekend. Bye bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye.